Just like to call the August 8th meeting of the Conservation and Forestry Committee to order. I have just passed out the minutes from the meeting of July 11th. Do me a favor and please cruise through that and find out if there's anything that you see as a correction or an omission. I did find one, but I'll give you guys a minute here to look over them and see.
See if we can find the same one.
See if you can find the same one as me.
Under old business,
Yep.
it said that I suggested a site walk in August, but I was not at
You
this.
got it. Good job,
Not
Andy.
at this meeting.
All right. Because right up above it says you weren't at the meeting, but then right below it says you suggested it. Yep, that was the type, that was the one that I had, so thank you. I didn't know if we brought in another AB somewhere along the line and I missed it, or... Anything else to report on that, Mark? You were the only one that was here.
I don't see anything.
Any chance in a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes as corrected.
As corrected. Do we have a second over there, Andy?
I don't know if I can second it since I wasn't at the meeting.
I guess I still can second. I presume that's kosher, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, I second it as well. I presume that means we need to vote. The two of us, all two of us?
We,
Okay, so we will have accepted as corrected. I will forward that back to Mike and make that one change. And we can go from there.
Question,
By all means.
now that we have accepted the minutes of the July meeting, can we discuss stuff contained in those minutes?
Yeah, that would be part of old business. Are we gonna, is this something different than the goal statement, or is it part of the goal statement?
No, it's different than the goal statement. We can either take it now or we can take it when we get to old business on the agenda, either way.
Okay, let me hit up the chair report, and then we can get to old business, and we'll go from there, I guess. So, as far as the chair report goes, we have a site walk that has been set for Monday at 4 o'clock on the 15th, at the end of Town Farm Road down toward the Sanborn Road side, roughly across, but down toward Baker of the Sanborn Road. And we'll go up in from there and take a look at the property. Part of the impetus behind that was new people on the committee and anyone else from the different committees that would like to come and take a look at the property and see what the management plan says and have things be pointed out on site. And then that way everybody has a little more of an updated, again, with different personnel here on the committee, we have more of a fresh view from different people out there and from different committees of town. That way, when we get to a point where we're looking to bring something forward uphill, so to speak, to the selectmen, we can have different committee inputs rather than just this committee specifically.
that is bad for me because I've got an appointment in Scarborough at 2 o'clock.
Okay? I will jot that down. Mark out.
I'm gonna be in Dover Foxcroft on that date.
Okay? Andy.
Perfect world.
Okay, well, again, the concept is really one of trying to get,
People can show up.
you know, a good number of people. I'll have to just take that under advisement, I guess, because inevitably, we're always going to have,
Somebody.
you know, somebody that can't come. So if the concept is trying to make sure that we have, you know, whether it be, you know, new personnel on the committees walk with the management plan in hand, or Dave, obviously, you're welcome, or anyone from town is welcome to take a walk out there with us. So I'll just have to look at that, I guess, and try to get a consensus on what the best time is. Again, Wednesday works fine for me too. Just simply didn't want to have only one date to find then that we were kicking in a number of months later, still trying to get a site walk to happen. We wanted another one coming into late last fall. Andy had suggested to wait to avoid, you know, any hunting season pressure out there. So that's really why the August-September window really made sense to us. So again, let me just put out a bulletin, I guess, and try to make sure I've got a hit for who can come. And we'll just have to make a decision to go from there. Again, if we went Wednesday or a different day for a rain day, that's fine too.
If it does land on Wednesday due to rain, which I highly doubt it, but
Lately.
yeah, rain date would
Yeah,
actually
rain
be
would be
nice.
nice, yeah.
You're welcome.
So are there certain days, Andy, that are better than others, or?
No, just Monday was the only day I had a conflicting
Okay.
schedule.
The same with me, pretty much.
So you think Wednesday would actually work? So if we, maybe a good idea would be to default for the Wednesday and just see how it goes and maybe go rain or shine at that day, or?
I mean, you got feelers out to people already for Monday, correct?
I do, but the only people that I've had reply were Kelly and Sam,
Were they
And Mike.
affirmative to
the
go?
Monday, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I can try for Wednesday and see if they immediately reply to the positive or something. I can put that out there.
Okay.
But I'll just have that email chain, you know, still go to everyone so that we have it ready for everyone.
Yeah,
This is not something which is a, you know, any policy decision-making scenario. It's simply just like an informational workshop style scenario. So we aren't constrained by the, you know, 10-day meeting scenario where we're making sure that, you know, we have stuff posted up on town websites or anything like that, but.
I gotta look through my schedule to make sure I'm free, but I'm sure I can.
Yep.
Something.
No, by all means, Dale, like I said, whatever seems to work for you, just put it out there. I'm really trying to get participation, and it doesn't matter to me if it's rain or shine or one day or the other. I was just trying to make sure that we had an idea that we could get it done within a length of time, so.
I confirmed the Mary Grant chair can't make it all that week, he'll be in Toronto.
Right, I did get an email back from him, so as far as I know, he's out, period. So we're trying to get the rec committee, as well as the conservation committee, and then perhaps Dave as a liaison, as a selectman out there as well,
If
so.
I can make it, she can stand in my place.
There we go, okay. Okay, so if that is the chair report, I will take that and jump on that here within the next day or two so that we have enough time to get people lined up either for the Monday or for the Wednesday, but I'll see if we have positive hits on Wednesday before canceling Monday. The email, we seem to get good responses over email. Dave, I don't have you, I don't have you on my email chain for the Conservation Committee. I presume you'd like to be on that as well? Okay. Okay. Okay, so if we're moving on to old business, Andy, go for it.
the first will be, I'll take it out of order because the minutes are fresh in front of me here. On page 2, item number 4, as far as accepting and implementing the forest management plan,
Yep.
the vote is 3-0-1 with Steve Bodkin abstaining,
Correct.
and you abstained, why?
Because if I have anything that has to do with any work on the property, I didn't want to influence it one way or the other.
Okay. One of the concerns that I have is in our, town policy for elected and appointed officials, because there is a, section in there. I printed these, pass it down. And section 11, I believe, is on the 3rd page. And it refers to conflict of interest. And if we are accepting and implementing the forest management plan, if at some point in time you do receive compensation for your services, and that could be perceived as an appearance of conflict of interest, it needs to be looked at and determined before we move forward with that. By town policy and for transparency purposes of the committee.
Sure.
And I'm not sure exactly what that process looks like. But it is in here, and it would affect on, could potentially affect on how we move forward with the plan. But it should be, I'd like to see it addressed sooner than later, because it actually should have been disclosed and looked at before there was a vote to recommend implementation of the plan, in my opinion.
If there is an implementation of the plan, and as town forester, I'm not through conflict immediately presumed to be the person to do the work, then why would there be a conflict to this point?
At this point, there is not.
Right.
I don't believe, but looking forward, you have written the plan.
Yep,
Who's going to oversee that work?
yep.
If it is you, then we need to disclose that conflict or potential conflict of interest
Sure.
at some point in the near future.
Yep.
It was something that I had brought up way back when, at the beginning of this, and we've moved forward, but we haven't really addressed that.
Right.
I think we had discussed it, that was right when COVID all hit, and we kinda stopped meetings
Right.
for a while, so I think it kinda, but there was some talk of it. We had looked into it. I think one of the biggest things we looked at was, there was a motion made back, and who made the motion, and who put it forward. I think that's what we gotta go back and look at.
Right.
I think that was the biggie that we have to look at.
But there was compensation received for the plan itself, so I mean, I don't know if that was looked at before that was done, I don't know. But moving forward, if there is, a scenario like that, I think, I would like to get ahead of it rather than, have it at this particular stage to have to address it. And part of that's my fault, because I've missed a meeting, and, when I saw the minutes saying that this had moved forward, I would have liked to have seen this addressed before it was voted on, but I wasn't here to vote either, so.
So how, and this is a question to you and Dave both, I guess. And obviously it's personal to me. Would that same, let me back up to 30,000 feet, I guess. Would that same scenario be the case if I was not currently chair? Because if I am on the town committee as appointed by the town as town forester, then is the only, this is a procedural question, is the only concern the fact that I ended up in this chair because of a default from the previous committee chair that no one wanted this position? Because this is something that I adopted as essentially trying to keep the committee together. So again, I want to put that out, so let me kind of go for an overstatement here for a second. So that definitely is something that I much would have preferred to have been on the committee than to have been chair of the committee at that time. We brought, this is Carl and I, Carl specifically came to me. I went to Carl Davis and said, I have concerns that there would be some concern like you're voicing now. What happens if I am someone who is proposing work on the town property, but I'm now chair? So, to my point, I guess I'm just simply saying, I am sitting in this chair specifically because it was requested of me more than being a part of the committee as the town forester. So if the concern is one of having the town forester having conflict, then I would certainly entirely disagree with the town forester having conflict as just being part of the committee and doing the work. But if the concern is having the committee chair move something in that direction, that's why the abstentions, that's why all of the, step backs to even let the committee do its thing scenario happens. So that's a procedural scenario that I want to answer to your question, Andy, because I don't think that I've ever had, and this is, since the plan was written, even before I came on to being committee chair, there isn't some particular, mining of the town coffers in order to generate money for this or anything along those lines. This is something, again, which is governed. What happens within the town forest is still governed as a recommendation from this committee moved up to the selectmen. So in the same manner, for example, that in a previous life, Dave would recommend work on a town road, and then it would be brought through a committee to a process to fruition to have done work. That same scenario can be talked about there as well. So that's why having the abstentions, that's why having the committee do its work. I'm asking, is it simply that I'm sitting in this chair, or is it that it's some concern that you have within the
I don't
method?
think sitting in the chair, being the chair doesn't mean that you have to put forward anything. You're just running the meeting.
Correct.
So, but the concern was, I believe back, we're talking back when we were doing, right before COVID and all that, so I kinda have to reboot here.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat, dude.
But I think the problem was the motion and the voting on it. That's where the procedural issue may be, okay?
On
You
the
can-
voting of which?
Putting forward the forestry plan.
Okay?
Okay, that would be the only thing that I could think of.
Meaning the vote from the vote from the previous meeting that we're talking
No,
about?
before that,
Okay?
okay, that's what I think alerted to that, but we'd have to look back at that. This is something there that, we wanna make sure that there's no conflict of interest. I don't know a whole lot about it. I understand what Andy's saying by reading this, that there may be some because of the situation where you have, the town forester, putting forward a plan, you're paid for, and then you have the town forester, which could get compensated on the other side of it also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
That's what
Well, that's
just trying to figure out how this
again,
all
I want
works.
you both
We
to
wanna make sure.
understand that is, and always was even before this position, meaning the chair scenario, a part of it. I personally disagree with the idea that a forester who writes a plan is in conflict with implementing that plan.
As long as the forester isn't making a motion to accept the plan and voting on the plan.
Exactly. No, and that's why the
Long as-
extensions, right.
But I believe at one point you had.
That I what?
Back in the, I believe at one point you had voted on that plan.
I would not have, I mean, you can prove me wrong, certainly, but again.
We just wanna make sure that hasn't happened.
Again, my goal, and you have to take this over, since the plan was written in 19, let's say, I'm not even having it in front of me.
Yeah.
But this is a commission project from the town that was written and submitted by the town forester, and then brought about and asked as of this committee to accept, implement, do work on, not do work on, do whatever you want to with it. And at that point in time, again, I guess what I'm getting at, Dave, is if I'm sitting here saying that the adopt and implement vote from a month ago was something that I would have abstained for, then I would have had no reason not to, and it would be a similar scenario that I would not have voted to do so before. I can't say that it didn't happen, it would have been 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. We just wanna make sure we go through the right steps, push this forward so we don't have to worry about,
Yep.
number 11 here, of conflict of interest.
Because the way that would have worked, the plan itself was commissioned by the town through the selectmen at the time. I was paid by the selectmen at the time. and then the plan was just simply there. So, again, I don't know anything about, there was this length of time that there was always a presumption that then, since the town had hired the plan to be written and asked for recommendations for the town to do these things on the property or not do these things or do whatever things on the property, that's essentially where it stood. So I don't remember there to have been anything that was an adopt and implement action. It was purchased by the town, and then that's about when you came on the committee, Andy, was simply saying, okay, the town bought this plan, but did we vote to implement it? Or did we vote to accept it? And that was some of your original verbiage when we were even back down in the code office downstairs, when we were having meetings down there. So, I don't think that there was a vote that I took part in to accept or adopt or anything at that instance at that time. But again, my concept is simply to say that if I am not taking part in the acceptance or implementing or design of how one would take care of this implementation, we're not even to that point yet. So this previous motion has been passed. I've abstained from it. As far as I can see, the procedure's good. And by all means, if there is something that comes to pass years down the line that we elect to do something with this property, then all in good faith, there can be any idea that the town would like to have this project or plan implemented. We haven't gotten that far yet. That has to come out of this committee before it goes any higher up to the selectmen. So where we are now, in my mind, with the old business of the plan part, is simply that the accept and implement was meant to follow up with language that you had last year, Dave, in that you and Andy had brought up the adopt and implement. Have we actually adopted and implemented this? Meaning like we bought it, but did we vote to use it, I guess is the way to put it. So that's come out of committee at your request, because when you were last here, your concept was, it is the committee's recommendation to bring something forward uphill, so to speak, to the selectmen, come by a consensus, and then bring it upstairs, so to speak. And that's where last month's meeting has been. So again, anything that has to do with how it's done has not been talked about yet.
Now, the first thing that you mentioned was whether you were a standing member or chairperson of the committee, would it make a difference? I have researched the town reports, and all the town reports, and I don't know how it can be interpreted, but it says the town forester shall be a standing committee of the committee, I'm sorry. So whether that's standing member title means just a voting member, or it doesn't specify. So I don't think that necessarily makes a difference. But getting back to the conflict of interest, I had asked at one point, if the plan were implemented and adopted, and we moved forward with this, how would you be compensated for oversight of the project? And it's a percentage of the cut, isn't it?
It can be anything that the town deems appropriate. There's a
Okay.
million ways to do it, so it's not something which is, you can have a person paid by the hour, you can have a person paid by commission, it's completely entirely dependent upon the client.
But I think that going by town policy that, and I don't know if it's something that the selectmen want to look at, but I feel there needs to be a determination of conflict, if there is. Certainly, if you go down to section D, it's avoiding the appearance of a conflict. And one thing that some folks have said to me is, geez, you've been on the committee now for 3 years, and the only thing that you've worked on is the town forest, and that's it. Because we really haven't done anything outside of focusing on promoting the town forest cut.
Okay?
So, let's just, and I don't want this spun negatively, don't take this personally, but if
We're
you have
going there, but that's okay.
If you have the chairperson of the committee, and I'm putting this out there for complete transparency for all of us, if you have the chairman of the committee, who's the town forester, who's submitted this plan. He's been, the committee has done nothing other than promote this work for 3 years. And by the way, he's gonna get a percentage of the cut when the project is complete. It doesn't look good. So there's your appearance of conflict.
Then my answer is rewrite my job description.
I mean, I think that we're too far in the process for that, but
We haven't done anything yet, Andy.
the appearance could be there.
Andy, the appearance is no different. If you can, again, I don't want to turn this in a different direction, but there isn't anything which A, has currently been done. So
Right,
you're
but
talking,
we're-
so you're talking about the appearance in and of itself.
I'm trying to get ahead of it rather than be
And
behind it.
that's for the win. That's for the win. That's cool. But the concept is, if you have in a small town, someone who is being asked to give advice toward how to handle a situation of a town piece of property, and that advice is accepted, that advice is encouraged to be moved forward, then the short answer is, the town writes my job description, do something, do nothing.
But
It's the will of the town that has brought it forward to this point that that motion was moved forward. So if it is a function of how one is to be paid, now is the time to have that discussion more than it is to say, I mean, it's akin to saying, I'll use the analogy, I'm getting ready for a knee surgery on my knee. We went in and we had an MRI on my knee. This, and this were things that need to be corrected. And the person who is the one that is looking at the MRI and suggesting work on the knee is the one who is going to be doing the surgery. Is there a conflict of interest or an appearance of one? He is a surgeon, so by your definition, you could say no surgeon's input should be used to generate an idea whether or not that guy should do the work.
I think that's-
Should one person always be the one to give the recommendation and another person always be the one to do the work?
All I'm saying, Steve, is we have a town policy that needs to be looked at closely moving forward.
Sure.
And it clearly shows this. It's why we have the policy. And it's not accusing anybody of anything, it's saying, look, maybe we need to pump the brakes and make sure that moving forward, like I said, for 3 years, all we've done is focus on the town forest harvest plan. We as a committee really haven't done any other work. There's a lot of other work in the comprehensive plan that I feel we should be focusing on.
So by that definition, that makes what non-work we've done makes what work we could do be
It looks like we're just focused on this, and at the end of the day,
Well, the only thing is,
there's a paycheck for somebody, and if that's the end game, then we need to stop, and it's not to take money away from anybody.
Well, dude,
It's to make sure that it's
I'm not
done,
worried about the money part, but all I'm saying
it's done
is,
by town policy. That's why we have the policy.
then knock yourself out.
It has
Find
nothing
out
to
what
do with
it
knocking
is.
myself out. It's making sure the integrity of our committee is transparent and is following town policy, plain and simple.
So what is non-transparent about it?
That we haven't had this discussion at any point in time, working on accepting and implementing the plan and what the long-term implementation of the plan looks like.
That isn't to be determined until after it's, you don't put the cart before the horse on that. I'm confused, again, I don't want to get too far off into the weeds, because the short answer is, in terms of this committee's business, by all means, address all conflict of interest, however you feel appropriate. I don't have any concern over that because I'm being completely transparent. If I've ended up in this seat and that is the concern, then that's one method of answering your question. If the answer is there is a paycheck at the end of it, then that's another method of how to answer the question. Take the incentive to cut more timber away from the style of the harvest payment, and then that would answer the conflict of interest. However that works, I'm just saying right now, the only thing that you are balking at is the idea that the plan has been accepted and asked to be implemented by its own merit.
I'm not balking at that,
The
Steve.
plan itself is something that was submitted, and it has been deemed to be feasible, appropriate, some good ideas. The methodology hasn't been worked out yet. It's a working document. So we haven't gotten to the point yet where we are deciding how to go about implementing it. And that's where this committee takes it forward in a way which shows that transparency.
I'm not balking at the process of last month's meeting because I was not there. But I think that the conversation of the conflict of interest is long overdue. I mean, it was brought up, like Dave said, it was brought up pre-COVID.
Well, then where did it go?
It went nowhere, and that's why we're having it tonight. You know, I
But
just,
if that conflict is something that's not to be answered by this committee, then where has it gone outside of this
I
committee?
mean, how do you feel about it, Dave, as selectman? I mean, how do you feel, do the selectmen determine this and make a decision on it?
I mean, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, guys. I'm just trying to simply say that if someone is trying to do good work for the town and saying, by all means, you write the forester's job description.
Yeah,
To avoid any conflict, then by all means, write that job description. But don't make it be that the process is somehow conflicting.
I don't think what Andy's saying is anything malicious intentionally going on here. It's, I think by what I remember, what we had discussed, when it had been brought up, it was the process to get to this point, okay? The implementing, the votes and all that. This is something that, you know, the rest of the board would have to discuss and kind of look into and make sure that this process is working correctly. It is a flawed process.
Well, and again,
It's a flawed
and
process.
again, it's
Because-
very similar to, again, if it would be a road agent putting forward an idea of this is how this road needs to be improved.
Yep.
Now you have work at the end of
That's
the
a flawed
process.
process also.
It is, no, they all, and that's all I'm
Okay.
saying, Dave, it's
But-
just that if anyone understands someone working in a position to do work for the town and doing it through full transparency.
Yeah.
It would be someone who has been in your position before.
Yeah, and.
So by all means,
Anyway, and there's a big difference between the road commissioner and this here. The road commissioner, you know, when the road commissioner makes a budget, they submit it to finance, it goes through this and that, goes through town meeting, his rates. Everybody knows what that road commissioner is making per hour. The problem with, I think, what Andy's, letting us in on is that nobody knows what the end game is here. Is this plan being put forward and who's gonna make what at the end of it? Nobody knows that. That's the big difference.
but in my mind, you are using what nobody can know now as a reason to not move forward with knowing.
I understand how
So that-
nobody knows what the process is after this is voted on to go. As a town forester, are you now working for us? On a percentage, a linear, a log foot, whatever.
Well,
Nobody knows
to answer your question is, if I were to be supervising any work on the town forest, I am working for the town.
that. Yes,
So.
but
I'm-
but there's no set rates, nothing, nobody knows.
Well, but again,
That's the
one
issue.
can, I'm just simply saying, guys.
That's why it's a
look,
flawed process.
We haven't, that part isn't flawed, we aren't there yet.
Yeah.
If a plan is what recommendations we can do with the town forest, are these good ideas? Are these good, compare the plan to the comprehensive plan, to compare the forestry plan to the comprehensive plan. If the two goals of those two things match up, then the idea now is to say, what parts of these would we like to go forward and how can we do it in order to avoid that?
What we've gotta do, we gotta keep working on this and all that, but
Yep.
we also, we do have to look into it to make sure that, because this is the problem I have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always under the spotlight, okay? I got people in town that can't wait till Dave Winchell makes a mistake. So when the mistake is made, I'm just using myself as an example.
Yeah, no,
okay?
I'm in the same
Everybody
boat.
knows, okay?
Yeah.
So when Dave Winchell makes a mistake, Dave Winchell's gonna make sure that he's covered himself, that he didn't make that mistake on purpose.
Right.
Or that, there was, it wasn't malicious, it wasn't done on purpose, okay? And if it's been brought up that, if you think there might be an issue here, then obviously we're gonna look to make sure that we can make sure that the issue is corrected before there's an actual issue.
Right, okay, so let me, I'm gonna jump in and hopefully encapsulate that. And I'll put this forth as town forester, perhaps with work to be done. The town writes the forester's job description on how that would be done. If the plan is a good idea, and it has been deemed a good idea, to have certain goals, and we are inviting other input from other town committees for possible recreational avenues, other scenarios that might get town goals moved forward, then the town writes that scenario for how a forester would handle that job, or whether there's no forester, or another forester, or you pull somebody out of the crowd, it doesn't matter to me. So all I'm simply saying is, this process should not be held up by an idea of what can't be known yet. You can't have, so to your point of there are hourly rates, there are contracts for this and contracts for that and proposals for this and we were essentially held to doing nothing with this plan or nothing with this process until this adapt and implement vote went through. It has now gone through, and the question is simply to say, all that says is that the plan itself and its goals have merit. It is this committee, not this forester, who determines what portions of that are done and when, or what sections of it are more important than others, and how anyone that would supervise that job gets paid. So in my mind, there isn't any conflict of interest up until the point where we're talking of the hiring, at which point if as an agent or a landowner, an agent for a landowner, the town, if you write the job description on how a person can be perceived and a job description can be written to avoid the conflict of interest idea, then write it. So it's not anything that's being hidden. It's not anything that, like, I have no idea whether there would be one stand thought to be worthy and one stand not, or work on 1 acre or work on 125 acres. So to have an idea that there is some conceptual idea of what this will cost or that will cost or this will pay or that will pay until that job description is written is putting the cart before the horse. So if this committee brings forth an idea that says, we would like to do work on stand 1 and stand 2 in the calendar year 2023, I'm just making up stuff, then we come back to the committee and say, how would we have that happen and how would that conflict be avoided within that job description? But we haven't written the job description up, we only have recommendations. So by all means, in my mind, to ease your conscience, take it back to the selectmen, find out how it would be thought. But the plan in and of itself was written, A, before any chair scenario was happening. It was written underneath of the comprehensive plan umbrella. And it's been accepted, and you personally asked us to have a proposal come out of this committee before selectmen would review it. So since we are now at that point, we are now coming to the point where we perhaps could be writing a job description for a year out, or 2 years out, or 5 acres, or 10 acres, or whatever it happens to be. So by all means, go about, finding a way through that, forest, so to speak, figuratively and literally, that works for you guys. So I guess the only personal part of it for me, guys, is just simply saying that the writing of the plan and the acceptance of the plan and the appearance of the acceptance of the plan condones some sort of a conflict by submitting it, then in that case, no forester should ever have been hired by the town to do any work on town jobs, period. Fair?
But it was at that point in time, Steve, when I asked you specifically that if the plan were adopted and work were to happen, how you were compensated.
But what did I just answer though, Andy?
It was a
You can't
percentage.
until I said, these are ways of doing it, but we don't have a job description yet. The plan wasn't even accepted at that point.
Right, but I'm asking the question and bringing this forward at this point because we are moving in that direction. It's the appearance, and it's everything in here. that we can avoid a lot of this
Yep.
by following, I mean, we're bound to follow the town policy, which, if you read it, I mean, I think that you'd be foolhardy not to look at it and
So
follow
let
it.
me cut to the chase and say, how would you write my job description to avoid conflict of interest?
That's not up to me.
Sure it is. It would be up to Dave if he's on the board. So if we're bringing information to the selectmen from this committee forward so as to how to show transparency, then it is to someone on this board to bring upstairs to the selectmen. You're asking the question and you're giving a problem, which is a valid problem that needs to be addressed. But you're dead-ending at the problem without a method through it, which I don't see as being all that complicated.
Well, I'm bringing it to the committee's attention. I'm not claiming to have all of the answers, Steve. I'm just saying that we're at a point that we need to look at this. Plain and simple. I mean,
Sure.
and it's not malicious. It is for the integrity of the committee, like I said when I opened the discussion.
Yep.
And ultimately, when we get to the point of any work happening, I believe it's gonna be up to the legislative body to decide yes or no.
Sure.
Public hearings and they should be,
Right.
obviously be a town meeting.
Well, that's still, I've heard different versions of that too, but that's entirely up to the town to
Everything's
decide.
decided at
Yeah.
town meeting.
Yep.
Unless we decide, you know, we are thinking about changing the way we do town meetings.
Well, no, that's not actually the case. I'm just simply saying that, I mean, the previous, when the plan was written and it was brought back to the Conservation Committee, and you can go back to video recordings all you like, I have no issue with having the entire process go up through the town meeting for approval of work on it. However, it goes without saying that if someone were to ask someone at town meeting how to go about repairing a road, that they also, specifically that person, might not know how to do work in the woods. So having said that, there is a point at which you are hiring someone to do work for you.
So what you're doing is you're gonna do the same thing I did for 9 years, okay? I put forward a budget, then I go to town meeting, I tell them how smart I am, this is what I'm gonna do, this and that, and you have people come up and tell you how to do your job, just like will happen to you.
Sure.
Cause you know, you do woods, I do roads.
Yep.
And, so, but at the end of the day, you know, whatever, when you have a decision of this magnitude, because, you know, it's, you know, people are, you know, unfortunately, they're not gonna probably come out to the walkthrough like they should and this and that, but that's a decision that the townspeople are gonna make what they wanna implement.
Yep.
And that's
By all
something
means.
we would be putting through a town meeting because, and that's where your expertise would come into it, and your job is to sell that to the people at town meeting, that why this is a good idea.
Well, that, no, I'm
That's what I-
gonna, well, I'm gonna
that-
back
that's
up.
what I used to do
Well,
as a
I agree
road
with you, but what I'm telling you is I'm going to back up a half a step and say, the townspeople at that meeting and the people that are in this room don't have to agree with everything that's in that management plan.
No, they don't.
So I don't, you know, I can sell my ability to be a good agent on behalf of the town to do the work. You are a good road agent, you have the skills to do the work, and you offer up the information and the town makes the decision.
That's right.
It's the same scenario here.
thing, yep.
So that part of it I agree with wholeheartedly. So, but I do want to stop back and simply say, again, the plan is recommendations. The plan is a working document. It needs to come in front of the town. And at the time that we last talked about it with you as a liaison, the concept was bring it out of committee up to the
Select board.
selectmen, and the selectmen would help to determine a good process for it.
Yep.
So the only thing I can say is with regard to the, you know, Andy's concept on the old business here, is by all means, please, you know, bring it to the selectmen, because I am all for any method of doing the work that would try to ease your pain on an idea on whether or not there is something nefarious happening. Because by the same token as you're sitting here saying things like, you know, we need to avoid the appearance, or we need to avoid the conflict, I'm also simply saying this is a good faith of the town forester saying, I am your employee. You write my job description. So find a way to write it. If the goal of implementing the plan is a good one, then find a way to implement it. And then that's brought through the committee and up to the selectmen and up to town meeting, and then off we go. So, again, there's nothing being hidden, there's nothing but we can't answer questions that have not been asked yet. And even if it is a question of how one could get paid, if we don't have a job description in front of us as to what's trying to be implemented, there's no way for me to answer that, other than to say, sometimes you do this and sometimes you do the other. But the town is hiring a forester to do a job. Write my job description. That's as transparent as it can be.
So this is.
So there's no particular motion or anything like that. I think we're talking about on that regard tonight. It's not like there's nothing has to be voted on for that or anything here tonight, correct? But by all means, Andy, please do, sit down with a pad and paper, talk with Dave, talk with other people and say, how would one have a forester that has recommended this be known that they are working on by the best interest in the town's behalf? And see what they have to say.
The Board of Selectmen create the job descriptions, correct?
Yeah.
So that's not my call.
Well, again, though, you bring up the concern, so if everything comes from this committee to the selectmen, then that is in part your job description.
It is not. Dave just said, the selectmen, and it's been that way since the dawn of time, they create the job descriptions.
Okay,
Committee members do not.
Unless
bring the concern.
Unless it's an ordinance, which it's like when we create the ordinance, put it through town meeting.
Right.
You gotta check-
again, it's irrelevant to me,
Yeah.
guys. A person who is transparent does not have a concern over who writes it. If it is the town body, if it's the town meeting, if it's the town selectmen, if it's the conservation committee. Be stewing in your head on how that would work, that someone who has recommended something and sits on this committee would do it without.
Just looking to see what the ordinance and the policy says, see if there's anything there, and, maybe at some point, if there's nothing there, then, we can look into, we can make this, work.
Yep.
Make sure it's all out there and everybody knows what's going on.
Yep.
So.
Again, there's
I can discuss
nothing, there's
that with
nothing
you.
to be hidden by it. So if there is a concern from the townspeople and you guys are bringing concerns forth from the townspeople, then you have to be willing to try to help us muddle through the idea of what that would look like to avoid that, that's all. So that's what I've got for that portion. Do you want to look, Andy, do you want to go through a little bit of the stuff that you had from the three towns?
Yes,
different
it's
set?
pretty much the first one is at several of the meetings, we talked about some of the good work that the town of Alfred is doing with their Conservation Commission and kind of what it looks like. And one thing that I like, and, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'd like to see at some point our group have a spot on the town website so that, like Alfred, when you go on, you click on their little thing, you pull up their page and it brings you to, all of their meetings, their minutes, and on the opening, the home page has, the committee members and all of that, and you can see down at the bottom on that page, it gives the duties of the commission, so it's kind of a good overview of like what the commission is responsible for and what their goals are and kind of what they hope to do and accomplish. It was just one of several towns that we looked at. I think Kelly had said that she had also looked at another town.
Yep. Yeah, we had also had North Berwick and Sanford that we had gone over as well at previous meetings.
Yeah, and part of the idea was, so that when new members join the committee, which we have trouble with a full group and has been since I've been on the committee, but when somebody new comes on, they would be able to look at, what does the Conservation Committee do?
you know, by having this on the website page, you know, when people pull up the Acton website and they see this on here, you might actually get some more people to,
Right.
you know, participate.
But I mean, I feel that it would, even though they're kind of separate entities, like the Goat Hill project that Carl Davis kind of spearheaded and accomplished, I think that that's an amazing project, and it kind of originated at this level. I think some of that could be highlighted on the page. Something like the Mary Grant Committee, the Mary Grant property, that was donated to the town, a trail system built. Very, very similar information so that, you know, more people are aware of it and can take advantage of the recreational opportunities that we have. So I think that, I don't know, it's just an idea that I had, that if we could get something on the town webpage, that would be great.
Yep.
And getting, duties of, it doesn't necessarily have to be titled the duties of the commission, or it could be just like a overall kind of summary about, you know, what we're about.
Right.
What our goals and dreams are, I guess. And some of that language could be taken from the comprehensive plan, because we have been working off some of the information contained in the plan.
Yep. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. My only question, and it would be to go through these three, let's just say we'll use these three as templates. The biggest thing that we'll have to look at in this regard, and it's been brought up before, is that anything that has to do with listings within these job descriptions and duties that pertain to anything regulatory, we are not. Talk to me, Dave.
I know you lost me there, dude.
No, and I mean,
We are a committee, not a commission, and we don't have any law that we write, or we can be asked certainly to bring forward any information and recommendations
You don't
that
have to
we
do it as
have.
a conservation commission, you can do it as a conservation committee and still do the same idea, right?
No, not if there's anything regulatory in here, because if the selectmen, now what I'm getting at, for example, is if the selectmen were to say, we have a piece of property that may come up and we might like to think of bringing it into the town fold of owned properties that the town, Mary Grant was how that worked. Or the property over back behind you, Andy, when we talked about looking at that piece, the piece that comes out by the school. That was brought to me and to the town conservation committee to walk that property and say, is this something that would be a good idea to be added to the town property? It was something that was recommended to do so. It turned out not to work out by the committee in whatever the form of that recommendation followed. But those are recommendation scenarios as opposed to, or advice that's sought by the selectmen and by the town. Do we have a thought as to what we would do with this piece? Is it a good, valid purchase? Is it good for conservation land? Whatever the question would be. But anything that would be pertained to bringing, the way I understand the comp plan, and this, and by definition of how the selectmen have set us up to feed information upstream, so to speak, to the selectmen, is that we are an opinion, we are a recommending committee for certain things, but the decision makers are still the selectmen on how that works. So anything that would have to do with any approval or legislation by this committee, I don't see as being part of our job description currently without rewriting that job description, or writing it that way in the first place, because to your point, we don't have one. So if we were to say, we want a part in, for example, part of the discussion within this Conservation Commission is that all projects that come in front of the planning board, for example, are brought to the Conservation Commission for their recommendation for approval or disapproval.
Yeah,
And I'm not seeing that as something that we currently have as a
no,
part
we
of our
don't,
process.
no, we don't.
Or,
You know, but that, I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad idea, but,
it doesn't what?
I think
it
that,
doesn't sound like a bad idea. I mean, I would just read you, that's what they do here. Well, yeah.
Does
So do you
that-
think that the planning board, honestly, and the selectmen want, I mean, obviously, the Conservation Committee can give recommendations in our layman's opinion.
But
Are we at that point where our recommendation is part of that which will determine policy upstream of us?
Well, we've never discussed it, you know, I mean, this is something new to me, but, I mean, looking through here, I mean, that's, you can do research in conjunction with the planning board, I mean, you don't have to do it exactly like this, but some of these ideas don't sound all that bad.
Well, again, all I'm saying is that the information and the knowledge that we have can be brought forward with an opinion to the town, but we don't currently have any legislative or regulative ability, period.
No committees do.
Correct. That's the difference between committee and commission.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just saying, if you want us to have, if there was a thought that we should take that turn,
No.
then we need to have something written in at a much higher level of what the job description of our committee will become a commission, and therefore have opinions at the level of the same level as the planning board to do so, and I don't know that that's of the town's will at this point.
Oh, that's something you have, bring the town meeting and all that, that'd be another whole discussion. But, as of right now, the committee, the way it works now, I mean, I'm fine with this.
Right.
As an advisement committee. But I believe the committee could do other roles.
Sure.
I mean, looking through this here, if you took commission off this and put committee, and you know, you can go down through here, and there's some things I think would make you more, so this committee has more legs, you know, it gets out there a little bit harder, you know. I mean, working with a planning board, I would think would be a great idea.
Sure.
I mean, there's, you know, especially when we've got all the solar panel stuff going in, and, you know, we got, when you got Goat Hill, you got developments around it, it would be something there, I think, you know, this committee could help inform or make recommendations on if they feel it's bad for something that's been preserved or whatever. But I would have to do a lot of research on this here.
Right, so I guess what I'm saying is toward that end, that would have to come from the town meeting downhill to us, not from us uphill.
Yep.
So if the town would like this committee to have more regulatory and enforcement ability, then it's going to have to come from a credo above our level.
I don't think anybody wants any committee, well, at least the select board. I'm
Well,
not
that's my
gonna speak for
point.
the
Well,
whole
that's my
select
point,
board.
too. That's my-
I don't think we want any committee to have any more powers than they already do.
And that's
we don't need 6 more code
No,
enforcement
and
officers.
that's my point, Dave, is I'm simply saying that this is a group of essentially volunteers here
Yes.
doing this.
Yes.
And other than myself, within my very specific job description, I don't have knowledge. We had an idea that was brought to us a few months ago that had to do with, should we, as a conservation committee, be looking into whether or not there are failed septic systems on the lakes?
Yeah,
or
I was-
something. And my concept is, we aren't trained to make that decision, and therefore would, if I were code enforcement in that instance, I would be like, with all due respect, guys, go about your business, tend to the town properties, and
Well,
I have-
exactly.
you know what I mean, and that would be how that would work.
Yeah.
So there is nothing within these, documents, Andy, that is anything other than what we all hope we have the ability to influence. But
Right,
we do have to understand that we are stopping short of having regulatory permission that is granted by this committee. So there is no commission. It is a committee. And we would have to just simply say, I would love a job description. And where I thought we were with this recommendation from a couple of months ago is for you to have these 2 or 3 or 4 towns hopefully distilled into like a paragraph where we could put that on the website and move forward with it. So, you know, I'm happy to go through this and say, I think this is a good statement, I think this is a good goal. It correlates very closely with the comprehensive plan, and this is something, if you, would you like, I'm asking this as a group, can you and I and Mike and Kelly and Mark and even Dave come about using this information to create a small couple-page thing that says, here is what we hope to be as a committee? Because that is what would go on the website, But what specific projects are taken on by this committee are entirely of this committee's genesis. You know, when we say, do we want to do work on the town farm? Steve says we should, let's talk about it. Committee says we shouldn't, we're not gonna talk about it. If we're gonna do work on some other Mary Grant property or some other property that's coming up, again, if we come to this committee and simply say, what else do we have that we're doing? And I go, Andy, what other projects can we have out there today? Do we have anything else that boots on the ground can help this week, this month, this year? And then nothing pops back up, and I stick with the town forest property project because that's a multi-year project, then that's nothing that's at fault for continuing on with. And certainly shouldn't be anything that's seen as like single-mindedly, you know, happening. By all means, bring anything else about.
But I think that we would pull samples from several different towns, pick and choose what fits Acton best, dovetail it with the comprehensive plan. And, you know, once we have Kelly and Steve back, if they want to bring forward other stuff that they've got, then we kind of review it and pick and choose off the menu and make what we think would serve us best on the, you know, for a presentation on the town website.
So can I fire away an email here coming up this week, later this week, and say that this committee, we would like to have these guys go over these documents and draft, let's say, each one of us?
Yeah, or
A
just,
one-paragraph scenario to bring back and say, let's see what we can stick with and let's
Just
see
for,
what the penalties are?
when we build next month's agenda, we say that we are looking at mission statements and gather information for discussion.
Well, we've already done that, and that's where this came about, but we've dead-ended it, not actually creating one for ourselves as a draft yet. I'm
Right.
just saying, can we create that draft?
Right.
We need to get to that point of creating the draft.
But we need to pull some more information in from other towns, I think.
Well, we've already got 5 towns worth of information out there. Do we need more than that? I mean,
We need
obviously,
to get them on paper and get them in front of us so that
well,
we
that's,
can look
that's a
at them.
given. But that's my point is, if
Toss
we,
some ideas around as a group to see what we think is, you know, and then from that, you know, build our rough draft, our first
okay, well,
draft.
I would tend to think that the quickest way would be to build the rough draft, bring in a paragraph or just bulleted items. Or circle, go through each one of these.
Right,
And circle what we feel are like our top 5 points of our goals for this committee. And then we can draft it, simply like that, or something. But we've got to move past, we've got this information flying around out there. But in the term, of Dave's term of having legs, we haven't given it legs yet enough to create what the draft would be. So I guess what I'll do is just simply put out there that I'd like to have the committee members look at the information of the various 4 or 5 towns that we've had and draft a paragraph or bulleted items out of these documents that we feel correlate with our comprehensive plan. And then we can bring that about for a draft, and then hopefully it goes forward onto the town website.
Sounds good to me.
who manages our town website? Is it Mike or is it Jennifer?
Yes, Jennifer,
Is
but
it-
I was just thinking about who actually does we're actually been in discussion at some point that we are gonna try to revamp the website a little bit anyways.
Gotcha.
So, you know, if we can get something there for you guys to put on, that'd be good.
Yep. No, by all means. Again, I don't think any of us are trying to avoid any of the work that's out there. But if it is a function of having a job description begets more people, begets more ideas, then let's start at the beginning and have the job description written, sure. Again, the concept originally had been that if the comprehensive plan had this as an idea of the committee shall promote this style of an idea, then we've just left that wide open for the committees to determine. Part of the Lebanon and North Berwick and Sanford people that we talked with, the responses that came back were, the selectmen have given them an awful lot of autonomy underneath of their job description within town properties to do as they see fit. Some places are doing work on town properties without even bringing much forward up to the town level of the selectmen. Some aren't. So it would have to do with whether or not the plan, you know, again, do we draw the line at is money created or expended as a reason to move it up forward? You know, you don't go, like, for example, Town of Lebanon has got a little pond down off of Fox's Ridge Road, down toward the bottom side over there, Nesbit Pond. And the concept behind what, I can't think of the fellow's name from the Conservation, Bozak down there. You know, they have their funding, and the committee elected to build a small boardwalk down to the pond, let's say, or something like that. Wasn't cleared by the townspeople, that didn't have to go in front of the town meeting, that's how they had that set up.
I think that's how it works here.
So whatever, and again, Dave, I'm not saying that it's a
I
pro
know.
or a con, I'm just saying that if there are rules of engagement as to how we are to do business, then it needs to be out there. It can't be brought up at the time of business trying to be done, it has to be out there, like Andy says, ahead of time.
Oh, no, and
So
it
you know how to
does.
line it up and negotiate
I
it.
mean, just an example of that, you know, it's like, you know, all our department heads, everything, anything on town property, you know, any repairs, you know, anything major. You know, we always have come to us because insurance reasons and all that stuff.
Sure.
We have to know everything that's going on, unfortunately. We have to know pretty much what's going on all the time.
Right, but the only thing I was getting at is just simply saying that I am not proclaiming that any of these towns that we have asked information from are the end-all be-all of what we want to adopt as our committee
Absolutely
structure.
not.
Having said that, we have to draft it in order to know whether the line is here or here. So if we're at the point where a pen needs to hit paper, then just let's have the five of us write down a quick paragraph or circle bulleted items on 4 or 5 different towns' websites and say, here are statements that we feel ought to be part of our job description.
That's a great idea. Yep.
One of the things that I did bring up that kind of never really got any steam, it got discussion, and I thought we were gonna work on it, and I thought we were headed in that direction, was an ordinance for our committee. And
Isn't
I
that
think-
what we're working on?
I think that if we had an ordinance in place, it would answer a lot of these questions.
Well, I think you kill two birds with one stone, like Mark says, he thought that's kind of what we're working on. If you take right here, if you read the bottom of this, where powers of commission, advise, prepare, print, distribute, has a list of what the job description is.
Right.
Of that committee, obviously, that probably will go in a little bit more detail, but, you know, you take that paragraph right there, and that gives you a pretty good idea of, you know, what their job is. You know, I don't believe we have a description for this committee at all.
We don't.
Exactly what, you know, your job is.
Right,
And we've had
and again, and that's where this goes.
Yep, and so at the same time, while you're looking at doing this, you can do that. So you
Right.
can combine that and kill two birds with one stone. You know, we've made other committees do the same thing because, you know, some of the committees would go kind of rogue and they'd end up doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing.
Right.
We'd have to rein them back in, and so we end up, you know, having to vote in these policies, which at the same time, by doing that, you're gonna get everything kind of condensed down to everybody knows exactly what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, what the responsibility of the, committee is gonna be, and, you know, we'd be able to iron everything out. And by doing what you guys are talking about, bringing in 5 things, that's a good start,
Yep.
I think.
Yep, I mean, the point that we came to your point, Andy, was that and we did, and you were at the meeting that we had this, because Ron was at that meeting, we had all 5 of us, I think, at that point in time. The idea is that we have a job description, and our job within the comprehensive plan is based upon ideas that we are bringing forward toward the comp plan that we would like to move forward in a general direction. And if we have this circled and that circled and the other thing circled, you know, and we are within that realm, everything should be fine. But there isn't, you can't bring about an ordinance that says that thou shalt only do this but not that.
Yeah.
If we end up having some other project that has that obviously is part of a comprehensive, a conservation committee thought. I mean, again, all I'm saying is, you will never cover all the bases in a job description as such that one should have this as, and here's the word that I'm sticking to, ordinance.
I think that if you look at the surrounding towns, go through all this stuff, then pick some of the stuff out.
Because these weren't, forgive me for jumping back, because none of these towns, none of the 5 or 8 towns that we've looked at with this information, these 3 included, is this ordinance.
Is what?
It's not ordinance.
No.
So all I'm saying is that if all
There
of
are-
our projects come by us thinking, hey, this would be a great idea, let's bring it to the selectmen, or something like that, they determine whether we move forward with it, if it's a good idea or it's not a good idea. This is the genesis, this is the little nut, this is the seed, and it's brought forward upstream that way to figure out whether we do work on it or not. But an ordinance that writes very specifically what we have that is adopted by the town is simply in 1 word or 2 words, the comp plan.
I think what you do is you have, which some towns do, is they have an ordinance, and then they also have a webpage outlining what they do.
But what's the ordinance? We didn't see any ordinance, Andy.
Well, we don't have
None
it.
of the 4 or 5 or 6 towns that's information that got brought to us was an ordinance of what this committee, as a committee, not a commission, is meant to do.
But whether you're labeled a commission or a committee, it makes no difference. You can have an ordinance for either or.
If there's no regulation, why does it need to be an ordinance?
Well, we have an ordinance for the Warrant and Finance Committee, we have an ordinance for the Road Committee, which are both advisory committees. The town of Agunquit, for example, has a Conservation Commission ordinance, which is advisory in nature. And it goes right back to the original point of getting information out and getting descriptions of what we do and what we're about, and what our responsibilities and what our goals are.
Would that not be on this page?
It would be, I mean, this is, like, I look at this as more as information that comes from your comp plan and your ordinance combined. This is public information
Right.
where you're going to pull your goal statement from both your comp plan and your ordinance.
Well, I agree. I'm just saying,
do
if
not-
there is this ordinance out there, we have yet to see it.
We do not have an ordinance.
Not us. All of these 5 or 6 or 7 towns that we've been asked to look at for a model, we have not seen it as an ordinance yet. We've seen the recommendations, we've seen here are our job descriptions, but is there an ordinance as to determine that we have to have an ordinance in order to know what our job description is? That's all I'm saying.
You don't need an ordinance. I mean, the select board could create a policy, I guess. But an ordinance sticks, you know, where a policy can be changed at any time. We can do that whenever. And with the ordinance, it will stay from here to whenever, you know what I mean? Unless it was re-voted at some sort of town meeting. That's the difference between ordinance and a policy. You know, we had, many committees that didn't have any ordinances at all. But like I said, without, you know, to define the committee's use, the ordinance works because, you know, you're able to put everything in stone, exactly what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, how the procedure works. And, it's just, I think, good management doing it like that. But it doesn't, you know,
I'm not disagreeing. If we have it, it's fine.
yeah.
I'm just saying, if we don't have a regulatory authority, then our authority is granted to us by the selectmen.
Yes, but
And
it's
if
the
we have,
same,
and if we have an idea that we are to try to bring out these projects out of thin air and bring them back as ideas that we could implement, we might think of, could we do this? The selectmen, is this a good idea? Then that comes back to the committee and then it goes to the selectmen and the selectmen write our job description. So if the selectmen want to give us, if we want to put down there, the Conservation Committee feels that these are good goals for our body to do, you know, conservation projects, forestry projects, sustainable this and that, then by all means, put that all over the website, bring in as many people as you possibly can to this body to bring about ideas. But if we don't have authority, then we don't need an ordinance,
that's not true.
that's all I'm saying.
That's not true.
Well, that's fine, Andy.
It's
It
not,
doesn't-
it has nothing to do with authority. It is, the other 2 committees I just mentioned, the Warrant and Finance Committee and Road Committee have no operating authority. They are advisory.
So did they come up with their own ordinance, or did the selectmen?
It was a joint venture, and he's right, you know, they don't have any authority. The problem was they thought they did. Okay, so
Right.
we had to get an ordinance to harness them back, to make sure this is your job. This is all you're doing, you know, I'm not saying this is what happened here, it's not.
Well, again, I mean, we're like
It
four people
prevents it.
sitting around on a Monday night trying to figure out cool stuff to do for the town. I mean, it's not like, you know, we're not expending any money here, we're not doing any major projects and this and that. So again,
They aren't either.
I want these
You may though.
goals.
You may though.
Well, maybe in the future.
And
but-
in the future, you know, where the conservation's kind of a big thing now, and, you know, with what's going on with, Goat Hill and all that, money's being expended, and the Conservation Committee really ought to have, you know, a hand in all of this.
Well, forgive me for backtracking, just so that you know, it would have been before your selectman time, but
yeah.
certainly as a road agent and before Andy's in this committee. Part of the work that begot the purchase of Goat Hill came from the work on the previous town forest as conservation funds that were then expended and matched to help buy Goat Hill's property. So we have been embedded within that process for that specific project. So there is an awful lot of that project, and thank goodness for Carl for spearheading it. But there were projects that had to do with town forest work and monies and revenues that then got matched, and it was a town a town warrant article that came in front of the town that was brought about to say that monies generated from town projects on town lands, this one specifically on the Hebo-Hibo, is money to be earmarked, so to speak, toward other conservation projects. And that in part was what created a match and partly bought the Goat Hill property. So to
Right, and
that
again,
extent-
it's all advisory, and it all goes, in the end, it all goes before the town meeting for vote. So there's still, it's all operating under that advisory premise that we do not have authority, but we do have, you know, we are a working body that is bringing about, you know, conservation, open space, and whatever else we, you know, work on, but we are, in the end, we're advisory. So again, getting back to the ordinance, there's no difference whether you have an ordinance. There's nothing restricting you from having an ordinance if you are a committee versus a commission.
I don't see anything that's wrong with an ordinance, other than the fact that I don't think that we need one, personally. If the committee believes that that's the case, then that's fine.
But we've been talking at length tonight about having more job descriptions and more information to work off from. Why wouldn't you want an ordinance to work off from? I mean, that would be...
Because to Dave's point, we already just decided that there could be something out there tomorrow that we haven't even foreseen yet, and it wasn't written in the job description, and now we have to rewrite an ordinance in order to have authority to make decisions within it?
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said
Well,
that.
no, but you see what I'm
But
saying?
you look at that
either.
I'm trying to just make the point, I didn't mean literally.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just saying, if the job description of this committee is to bring forth projects and to give advice, and all we have is advice, then there's no reason to pigeonhole it to what would be within this ordinance that would be drafted, because it would be redundant to the comp plan. But by all means, again, so for example, if we went through this and drafted a 2-paragraph statement, let's say, that was our goal statement, and the selectmen adopt it, and we elect to put that on the website as our ordinance or as our mission statement, then by all means, call it whatever you want to. I don't have any concern over that.
Call it a,
But I don't think that we cannot do business along the way on doing anything else by not having that first.
no, I think really what Andy's talking about is you're doing a job description anyways, right?
Yeah.
You want a job description, we talked about the idea of, you know, the first issue we were talking about. You know, you take the job description and you morph that in with that.
Sure.
You take care of all that little stuff at the same time, so now you've got your job description, so you don't have to worry about later on down the road, another committee coming in and say, well, what's our job description? Well, what the last ones was. No, it's right here in an ordinance. It tells you exactly what your job description is.
That was my point right from the very beginning of time, from when the conversation came up.
So, I mean, really, you're doing it already. All you'd be doing is do your job description, of exactly what you're doing, and then you just present it to us, we clean it up, and then we put it at the town meeting.
Yep. Again, I don't have a concern with having it, other than the fact that I don't think it's
But you're
required
doing,
if
but
we're.
you're, but you're doing it anyways. You're pretty much doing it anyways, except what you do is you set it in stone.
Right,
So
but
you don't
again,
have to worry about the next committee's
because
coming
everything that
through.
we are doing is automatically moved upstairs to the selectman's office.
Yep.
There is nothing that we should be not doing now for waiting, which was the proposal at the time.
And I wouldn't
to have
suggest you
that
guys
at town
waiting at
meeting
all.
as an ordinance.
I just think that, you know, do your job description, work on what you're working on as you're doing it. And, you know, I mean, it would be, I mean, I'm not saying you have to do this, this is all what your committee wants to do. But you can get that to us, you know, before November. Oh, no, yeah, September, end of September, I guess. September, November, October, or whatever. I'm losing track. We were talking about
Yeah.
this the other night because we had something going on the warrant and we had to have it in by a certain time, but it was something at least you can work on. You know, whether or not it gets put on this year's, warrant or not, who knows? But, it does something, I think it's something that is a good goal.
So if we write this as if the first step is to go back to these documents and bring about these bullet points, and we have our goal statement, would it make sense for us to just simply say, okay, selectmen, here is our goal statement as it comes out of our committee?
Yep.
Is there some concern that you have or conflict that you have on what this says? And do you have an idea that you would like to
If
make
we
this
had a
more
conflict, we
formal
would
as
let
a
you know.
warrant article later?
Yeah.
Would that be the right way to do it?
Yeah, you know, submit, you know, give us your ideas, you know, see, we have nothing now. Get it to us and, you know, obviously we can mash it together for you and, you know, we just have the town attorney look at it, make sure we write it correctly.
Yep.
And then what we would do is bring it back to you guys, you know, does this look, you know,
Have there
like
been
what you?
changes that have,
Yeah,
yes.
does this look like what you envisioned for this committee? And then we take it from there, we put it to town floor,
Yep.
no big deal.
Again, as long as I'm of the understanding that in fact, this doesn't preclude us from conducting
Nope.
business anywhere else along the way, because the previous discussion had been,
No,
we should not do
it's
anything
not
until
gonna-
we have an ordinance.
It's not gonna stop, because there's nothing saying you have to have an ordinance. If there was something saying you had to have an ordinance, then you would not be able to do business.
Okay.
Then this committee would be no.
We wouldn't be here in the first place if that were the
This
case.
is just, I think, enlightening everybody, making sure that, down the road, everybody knows their role. And that's pretty much what they do with the other committees, the
Right.
same thing. And it's worked well, because we've been able to go back through, and this committee's been great, you know? You know, we've had committees that are not so great, and when they, you know, we have one or two members that go rogue, you can reel them back in, because you can
Yeah.
say, look at this, right here. And it works well, because, you know, if you can read, here you go. It's solved a lot of problems.
Sure. No, again, the preventive, and to Andy's point, whether it be the conflict or the job description or anything, I am not personally, you know, trying to push or sway or reduce anything.
What I would
So again,
suggest
the
is you
question
guys
is it just, you know, is it required?
work on, and move, keep moving on, but I would work on that as you work.
Yep. Okay.
That's my suggestion.
I'll put
That's the
that,
liaison here, that's all I am.
Right.
So you guys make the decisions what you guys are gonna do next.
nope, that's fine. So I'll put that out, Andy, if all of us, the five of us can go back through these documents from different towns and just have a little paragraph of bulleted items.
Right,
that
for
we
next
would
month's
have
meeting.
As an idea to bring about and hopefully condense, you know, at the next meeting, that would be helpful. Let's see, where are we here? So that would be the review of the goal statement that we have, Andy, because we just went through the old business A. Is there anything else that we have on, you know, new business or projects? We've kind of already looked at, if you call an ordinance a different job
Part of a
description, it's just part of a project, yeah. I'm looking at the old business and new businesses kind of being very similar here tonight. moving from one into the other. Is there any other new business that we would like to bring up, guys? Come on, Mr. New Project.
No, I'm just looking at the agenda, and we have our next month's meeting set, date. Is that-
Confirm it, right?
Yes.
I'm blocked on my, Monday, September 12th.
Correct. Yep. So that would be my last announcement if we don't have anything else under new business. Do we have anything else to speak of tonight before we talk of adjournment?
I have a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.